Hello everyone, we finally have a new launch date for the Falcon Heavy again. Elon Musk tweeted today that the Falcon Heavy is now scheduled to launch on February 6th, which is just over a week from now, and with it being so close, there is now actually a pretty good chance that it might actually launch on this scheduled date with no further delay. Now of course it could still be delayed, and there still is a chance that it might be the next day after, or even later, but there is now a very substantial probability that it will actually launch on that day, given that it is pretty close. That does of course put it only 1 week after the Falcon 9 launch 2 days from now, which gives SpaceX around 6 days to basically relocate their logistics. The launchers do share some personnel and some equipment, and so it will be a rather rapid logistic feat. However, SpaceX has done quickly succeeding rocket launches before, and so it is most definitely possible. This is a little bit more difficult than the ones before, but there's also more time than before. Now until then I will still make a few simulations on simplified models related to the Falcon Heavy, and I will give a few final predictions as to what might happen and keep you up to date with what is happening around the launchpad. But for now there's just such a rapid succession of spaceflight related news again that I'll have to update you on those, and today I'll probably not manage to make another video about theory, so that will have to wait a little given my own schedule. There are of course more space news for today. I had before talked about the recent spacewalk, which was a bit of a partial failure because the robotic hand on the ISS robotic arm that was replaced isn't functioning correctly, and for tomorrow there has another spacewalk planned to repair and reinstall this, which has been surprisingly rapidly prepared and planned, for the simple reason that a spacewalk around that time had already been planned before, although for a different purpose, and they have now basically replanned and rescheduled the spacewalk and repurposed it. Now there is still the possibility that we find out more about the robotic hand as we go along, and so that spacewalk might still be postponed or rescheduled again. We don't know for exactly sure yet. But on January 29th, the spacewalk designated US Spacewalk 48 will most likely reinstall and repair that robotic hand, and I will of course live cover that if it actually happens at that time. As for the Ariane 5 partial failure, there hasn't been anything new. We've got confirmation that yes, it actually was just an inclination issue, and yes, the other orbital parameters were indirectly affected by that, as I had expected, but we don't know anything more about the actual root cause of the navigation failure. And for the actual rate of progress on the Falcon Heavy launch, now we know that we have a set launch date now, but what's actually going on around the launch pad right now isn't really that exciting because the Falcon Heavy isn't there right now. It has been lowered and brought back into the assembly building after the recent static firing test, and has now been run through a few much less energetic but still equally important and possibly even more complicated system checks to make sure that all the electrical and computer systems on the rocket are reliably working. Right now SpaceX is a little bit more focused on the rocket launch 2 days from now, which will place 2 satellites in geostationary orbit during the first week of January. Then they will be running the very final checks on some of the Falcon Heavy's more delicate systems, and then bring it back out onto the launch pad to finally prepare it for the actual launch. Now this may be a little bit confusing. Both the rocket 2 days from now and the Falcon Heavy will launch from Cape Canaveral. However, they will not launch from the same space center, because actually there are several space centers at Cape Canaveral, and each of them with several launch pads, and the Falcon 9 that will launch 2 days from now will launch at the Space Launch Complex 40, which actually isn't even really NASA related. It is actually an Air Force station that has a space-capable launch pad for the Air Force's need of launching military satellites into space. Meanwhile, the Falcon Heavy will launch from the actual NASA Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex from Pad 39B, which used to be the Apollo and Space Shuttle launchpad and which was basically leased out to SpaceX by NASA mostly for the Falcon Heavy program. And while they can also launch Falcon 9 rockets from it, they have done so a few times, it is currently the only launchpad capable of also allowing Falcon Heavy launches, and thus basically the obvious choice for the first test flight. As for reusability and landing platforms, 2 landing pads at the Cape Canaveral have been prepared, as well as a drone ship. At this point we have no proper confirmation or detail on any additional experiments like fairing reusability. That's it for today. We finally have a launch date. Again, I will keep you up to date with any further news and go a bit more into detailed theory behind the Falcon Heavy test whenever the rapid space news coming in right now leave me the time to do so. And as always, thanks for watching.